So in this video, we're going to take a look at the lineup from Srixon in the driver category. We've got ZXi lineup. We've got 3 heads to take a little look at and maybe see if Srixon can make a bit more of an impact in that driver category with their lineup for 2025. Okay, so as I mentioned, we've got 3 heads to take a look at. We've got ZXi, the standard version, which is probably going to suit maybe the majority of golfers there, a little bit of adjustability in the head. We've got then the ZXi LS, so low spin, obviously for the higher swing speed, who's trying to get that spin number down, a little bit more compact, adjustability but in a different fashion. And then we've got the ZXi Max, obviously the maximum forgiveness. So I've just done a review of the iron lineup from Srixon, and I think definitely the irons become a little bit more of an underdog in the iron category. Definitely get overlooked, but they should definitely be in that element of trying them, and they felt fantastic. They were super impressive. And I think when you look at Srixon then in the driver category, probably a little bit weaker again, aren't they, in comparison to the big hitters in that fierce driver category. But honestly, first instincts of this looks premium, as it does with the irons, to be honest. The first look at the bottom of the club, it's very sort of clean. We've got a couple of weights in there, but very sort of clean on the look. We've got this blacked out sort of face, blacked out head, so it does look very sort of stealth, bit more of that premium sort of look. So we're going to kick things off. We're going to start with the ZXi. So this is the standard model of the 3 in a way, probably going to hit most golfers out there. We've got adjustability of some weights. You can see we've got a 10 gram weight and a 4 gram weight positioned in the back of the head into the heel and the toe. So obviously they can be switched around to suit maybe strike patterns or also sort of shot shape. Into that playing position, and I think first instincts with this, again, it sits incredibly square, which is great for me. So it's lovely and square, the black head into the black face, a very sort of stealthy look to it, very subtle logo as an alignment aid, and a sort of little dimple effect on the top of the head. So very clean look in a way behind that golf ball. Okay, let's get this first one underway with a ZXi. That's not a bad opening tee shot, to be honest. And it's that titanium sound we are hearing there, definitely straight away. And there's no carbon on this, which is an interesting one, as most of the brands now edging towards carbon, whether it's a carbon crown, sole, less titanium in there. This is still a pure titanium head, and you definitely sort of hear that in the sound. We don't sort of hear that sound so much nowadays, do we? A little bit more of that tinnier sort of sound. Ooh, lost my balance a little bit on that one. That's a good flight though. Great piercing flight. I mean, it feels solid enough that it's just a little bit louder on that sort of sound. So I've got 9-degree head. We've got a lot of adjustability in this neck sleeve here, so we can change this club face around a little bit, loft up and down quite a bit, so there's plenty of adjustability on that front. That's nice again. Good flight. Yeah, some pretty solid numbers there, to be honest. Maybe that spins just a little bit on the head. I'd like to see that come down a little bit, so that's maybe where the LS would be interesting. I'm going to hit that in a minute. Can just sort of bring that spin down a little bit more to sort of suit my delivery. So let's talk technology that's happening in these drivers. So first of all, we've got this iFlex face. So different thicknesses on the club face, obviously being a little bit thinner in the center of the face to create as much flexing as possible, obviously within legal limitations there, to maximize your sort of ball speed. And then moving into the crown, as we mentioned, there's no carbon here, but what we've got is like a lattice effect on this incredibly thin titanium crown. So again, we're going to save some weight, a little bit like what carbon's doing, and then that weight is going to get redistributed lower in that head to help with that deeper CG location. Ooh, right, it's a touch low in the face. It's flown quite nicely, actually. I think that's going to spin up a little bit more than what I've just seen on that 2,900 area. I think that's got a 3.7. That's more me. That was low in the face on that strike. That's always going to typically spin up. And that's maybe when you go for that fitting, you've always got to weigh in, you know, use a launch monitor to measure your strike, because strike is going to play a huge effect to your spin and your ball speed. So the other thing that's sort of happening in the club head, which we have seen in previous models, to be honest, that's carried over into the new lineup, is the rebound frame, is what Srixon call it. Basically got some flex zones in the head, so as the ball hits the head, energy can be lost through the head, so these flex zones transfers that energy back into that club face and back into that golf ball. Again, it's all about sort of maximizing that ball speed off the face. And then when you look really closely to the face, we've got this laser milling on the club face here, which is a new addition to the lineup. Yeah, again, not a bad strike. Nice high flight on that. Okay, so nice sort of feel off that driver to start off with the ZXi. Sounds a little bit on that louder side, but if you can get over that, then that's not a problem. It's just quite different to what we're used to nowadays with the carbon drivers that we see from the other brands. Right, so I've switched the shaft now over into the Max head. So Max, as you can appreciate, is maximum forgiveness. Now, unfortunately, I've only got a 10.5 head with me at the moment, so I'm lofting this down. So I'm going to test this neck sleeve here. I can go down by up to 1.5 degrees, so I can get this down to 9 degrees on that loft. Now, as I do that, it's going to open that club face up, and when I sit that down there now, that to me sits like incredibly square. So I'd imagine when you sit it in that standard setting, it's going to sit maybe a little bit sort of toed in. But again, it's a confident inspired head. It's blacked out yet again, as we saw with the other one, which has got the same sort of ripples on the top there. We look at the bottom, very similar on the profile here, but obviously we can see this movable weight now, or a fixed weight, but it can be changed. But there's only one weight, and it's a 14 gram weight right at the back. So you can appreciate this is stretching this CG location as far back and as deep as they possibly can. We know that helps with that forgiveness on those missed hits. So potentially a driver, if you're looking for that maximum forgiveness, this could be a good option. Ooh, that's a nice flight. Very similar feel, very similar on the sound of that comparison to that first driver we hit. That was a nice sort of piercing ball flight there. So just in that setup, in comparison to the other ZXi head with the original one we just sort of started off with, it's probably just ever so slightly longer from that front to the back, but there's not a huge amount of difference in terms of the head size. But obviously we've got that big lump of 14 gram weight at the back of the head in this one. Ooh, right, let's test some forgiveness, because that was necky. That was off the heel. That'll be an interesting one. Got that little bit of gearing of that left to right shape on there. Just started up the left, heeled it off back onto target, but lost a bit of distance with that spin. So have dropped off. That wasn't a great strike, to be honest. So technology wise in this is exactly the same as what we've seen in the previous model, with the face, the iFlex face, the rebound, the thin titanium crown. All the things are happening exactly the same. Adjustability in the neck sleeve, as I say, we're using that at the moment to crank this loft down. That's a nice strike. So in that standard sort of setting, we're seeing this, or Srixon saying this is more of a draw biased club. So if you're struggling with that left to right shape, obviously in that standard setting, it'll sit a little bit more sort of toed and a little bit more draw biased. And obviously we've got options to go up in loft as well. So if you did get the 9 degree head, went up to 10.5, if that was a loft that you sort of needed, but you struggle with that right miss as a right-handed golfer, then going up in loft will just slightly close the face even more, making it a little bit more draw biased again. Okay, so there's a few shots hit with the Max. Right, so switching now into the LS version. So we've now got, again, back to the two movable weights, but this time it's from front to back, as we typically would see in an LS drive. And I think this is quite a nice touch with a lot of the brands now, when you can have that adjustability. It's not just shove forward and that's your only option. So we've got a 10 gram weight and a 4 gram weight. So moving the 10 gram forward is going to obviously move the CG further forward towards the face, deeper, typically lower launch, lower spin, but maybe less forgiving potentially. And then flipping that around, and the 10 at the back just gives it a little bit more spin, a little bit more launch, and a touch more forgiveness. Now, into this playing position now with the LS, and again, the shape of the head is very similar to what we've seen. So the shaping of the head and the size of the head, this is a 460cc, isn't really changing through all those three drivers, which is interesting. I think sometimes when you go into an LS driver, we sometimes see the go to a 440, sometimes 450cc head, a bit more squat, compact, but this still gives you that lot of that confidence in terms of the head size. So this is a 9 degree head. I've got it set at 9 degree, and I've got that 10 gram weight at the front, because I want to try and get this spin down a little bit more, just to unlock a little bit more yardage for me. And hopefully that LS version can do that. So again, the sound is exactly the same. A little bit on that tinnier sound with that titanium crown with no carbon in there. That came out really nice. I'm interested to see that spin. Yeah, a little bit lower there, so I've just got a touch more out of that. Get a little bit higher in the club face. That's popped the launch up a tiny bit. That spin again is a little bit more controlled. Two nice consistent shots there. So I think for me, just being maybe a little bit picky on this. I'm really liking the look of it, the premium look. The sound's just a bit tinny for me. I think that might just put a couple of people off if you don't like it too loud. As I said before, you know, as we're seeing more and more carbon now, the sound's getting more and more muted. It just sort of maybe makes the titanium headed drivers just stand out a little bit more from the crowd maybe. But as always, that is a personal view on that. Ooh, right, that's a towy one. That's maybe where you might drop off a little bit on forgiveness with that 10 gram weight forward in the head. It's pulled a bit of spin off, and that's done all right, hasn't it? Sometimes we'll get away with those towy strikes because it'll pop it up, it'll pull a little bit more spin off, and sometimes you get some sneaky long ones from what feels like a bit of a miss hit. Again, not bad strike. See, just getting a little bit more consistency with that LS for me personally. I'm just going to hit one more shot with it. Then we can just check a few of those numbers out. There's a little bit of left to right shape on that one compared to the others, but I would take that on the golf course. Okay, so just as we pop the numbers up on the screen, you can take a little look, and there you can see just that lower spin number with the LS just helping me personally on my delivery, squeezing a little bit more out of it and just getting a little bit of a flatter peak flight on that particular club. So for me, great looking golf clubs, bit on the loud side for me personally, but got that good a bit of adjustability in there, and hopefully, you know, Srixon could just make that little bit of that dent in that driver category. Post your comments down below, let me know your thoughts as always, and hopefully I'll catch up with you all very soon.